Hello, folks. My name is Holoteshka ASMR, and I'm coming to you with a story of Irish folklore that hopefully you can fall asleep to, or in a worst case scenario, you can listen to for the next while and relax. The story is the coming of the Tuatha de Danaan. Chapter 1: The Fight with the Firbolgs. It was in a mist, the Tuatha de Danaan, the people of the gods of Dana, or as some called them, the men of Dia, came through the air in the high air to Ireland. It was from the north they came, and in the place they came from they had 4 cities, where they fought their battle for learning. Great Fallius, and Shining Gorius, and Phineas, and Rich Murius, that lay to the south. And in those cities they had 4 wise men to teach their young men skill and knowledge and perfect wisdom. Cineas in Murius, and Arius, the fair-haired poet in Phineas, and Urius of the noble nature in Gorius, and Morius in Phalius itself. And they bought from those 4 cities their 4 treasures: a stone of virtue from Phalius, that was called the Leophale, the stone of destiny, and from Gorius they brought a sword, and from Phineas a spear of victory, and from Murius the 4th treasure, the cauldron that no company ever went away from unsatisfied. It was Nuda was king of the Tuatha de Danaan at the time, but Manannan, son of Lear, was greater again, and of the others that were chief among them were Agma, brother to the king, that taught them writing, and Dianchecht, that understood healing, and Neat, a god of battle, and Crednus the craftsman, and Gaibnu the smith. And the greatest among their women were Bive, a battle goddess, and Matcha, whose mast feeding was the heads of men in battle, and the Maragoo, the crow of battle, and Era and Fadla and Benba, daughters of the Dagda, that all 3 gave their names to Ireland afterwards, and Aidan, the nurse of poets, and Bridget, that was a woman of poetry, and poets worshipped her, for her sway was very great and very noble, and she was a woman of healing along with that, and a woman of smith's work, and it was she first made the whistle for calling one to another through the night, and the one side of her face was ugly, but the other side was very comely, and the meaning of her name was Briosayet, a fiery arrow. And among the other women there were many shadow forms and great queens, but Dana, that was called the mother of the gods, was beyond them all. And the 3 things they put above all others were the plough and the sun and the hazel tree, so that it was said in the time to come that Ireland was divided between those 3: Cole the hazel, and Kecht the plough, and Green the sun. And they had a well below the sea where the 9 hazels of wisdom were growing, that is, the hazels of inspiration and of the knowledge of poetry, and their leaves and their blossoms would break out in the same hour, and would fall on the well in a shower that raised a purple wave, and then the 5 salmon that were waiting there would eat the nuts, and their colour would come out in the red spots of their skin, and any person that would eat one of those salmon would know all wisdom and all poetry. And there were 7 streams of wisdom that sprang from that well and turned back to it again, and the people of many arts have all drank from that well. It was on the first day of Beltana, that is called now May Day, the Tuatha de Danaan came, and it was to the northwest of Connacht they landed, with the Firbolgs, the men of the bag, that were in Ireland before them, and that had come from the south, saw nothing but a mist and it lying on the hills. Jochid, son of Orc, was king of the Firbolgs at that time, and the messengers came to him at Taver, and told him there was a new race of people coming to Ireland, but whether from the earth or the skies or on the wind was not known, and that they had settled themselves at Magrain. They thought there would be wonder on Orchid when he heard that news, but there was no wonder on him, for a dream had come to him in the night, and when he asked his druids the meaning of the dream, it is what they said, that it would not be long till there would be a strong enemy coming against him. Then King Eochaid took counsel with his chief advisors, and it is what they agreed, to send a good champion of their own to see the strangers and to speak with them. So they chose out Sring, that was a great fighting man, and he rose up and took his strong red-brown shield, and his 2 thick-handled spears, and his sword, and his head covering, and his thick iron club. He set out from Tuatha and went on towards the place the strangers were, at Magrain. But before he reached it, the watchers of the Tuatha de Danaan got sight of him, and they sent out one of their own champions, Bress, with his shield and his sword and his 2 spears, to meet him and to talk with him. So the 2 champions went one towards the other slowly, and keeping a good watch on one another, and wondering at one another's arms, till they came near enough for talking, and then they stopped, and each put his shield before his body and struck it hard into the ground, and they looked at one another over the rim. Bress was the first to speak, and when Sring heard it was Irish he was talking, his own tongue, he was less uneasy, and they drew near and asked questions as to one another's family and race. And after a while they put their shields away, and it was what Sring said, that he had raised his in dread of the thin, sharp spears Bress had in his hand, and Bress said he himself was in the dread of the thick-handled spears he saw with Sring, and he asked were all the arms of the Firbolgs of the same sort, and Sring took off the tyings of his spears to show them better, and Bress wondered at them, being so strong and so heavy and so sharp at the sides, though they had no points. And Sring told him the name of those spears was Crassock, and that they would break through shields and crush flesh and bones, so that their trust was death or wounds that never healed. Then he looked at the sharp, thin, hard-pointed spears that were with Bress, and in the end they made an exchange of spears, the way the fighters on each side would see the weapons the others were used to. And it is the message Bress sent to the Firbolgs, that if they would give up one half of Ireland, his people would be content to take it in peace, but if they would not give up that much, there should be a battle. And he and Sring said to one another that whatever might happen in the future, they themselves would be friends. Sring went back then to Tuatha and gave the message and showed the spear, and it is what he advised his people, to share the country and not to go into battle with a people that had weapons so much better than their own. But Eochaid and his chief men consulted together, and they said in the end, we will not give up the half of this country to these strangers, or if we do, they said, they will soon take the whole. Now as to the men of Dia, when Bress went back to them, and showed them the heavy spear, and told them of the strong, fierce man he had got it from, and how sturdy he was and well armed, they thought it likely there would soon be a battle. And they went back from where they were to a better place, farther west in Connacht, and there they settled themselves and made walls and ditches on the plain of the Magnia, where they had the great mountain Belgata in their rear. And while they were moving there and putting up their walls, 3 queens of them, Ive and Matcha and the Maragoo, went to Tuatha where the Firbolgs were making their plans. By the power of their enchantments, they brought mists and clouds of darkness over the whole place, and they sent showers of fire and of blood over the people, the way they could not see or speak with one another through the length of 3 days. But at the end of that time, the 3 druids of the Firbolgs, Cesarn and Nahach and Ignahach, broke the enchantment. The Firbolgs gathered their men together, and they came with their 11 battalions and took their stand at the eastern end of the plain of the Magnia. Nuda, king of the men of Dia, sent his poets to make the same offer he made before, to be content with the half of the country if it was given up to him. King Yoked bade the poets to ask an answer of his chief men that were gathered there, and when they heard the offer they would not consent, so the messengers asked them when they would begin the battle. "We must have a delay," they said, "for we want time to put our spears and our armour in order, and to brighten our helmets, and to sharpen our swords, and to have spears made like the ones you have. And as to yourselves," they said, "you will be wanting to have spears like our crassucks made for you." So they agreed then to make a delay of the quarter of a year for preparation. It was on a midsummer's day when they began the battle. 3 times 9 hurlers of the Tuatha Danaan went out against 3 times 9 hurlers of the Firbolgs, and they were beaten, and every one of them was killed. And the king, Yoked, sent a messenger to ask would they have the battle every day or every second day, and it is what Nuda answered, that they would have it every day, but there should be just the same number of fighting men on each side. Yoked agreed to that, but he was not well pleased, for there were more men of the Firbolgs than of the men of the. So the battle went on for 4 days, and there were great feats done on each side, and a great many champions came to their death. But for those that were alive at evening, the physicians on each side used to make a bath of healing, with every sort of healing plant or herb in it, the way they would be strong and sound for the next day's fight. And on the 4th day, the men of Dia got the upper hand, and the Firbolgs were driven back, and a great thirst came on Yoked, their king, in the battle, and he went off to field looking for a drink, and 350s of his men protecting him, but 350s of the Tuatha Danaan followed after them till they came to the strand that is called Track Oil. They had a fierce fight there, and at last the king Yoked fell, and they buried him there, and they raised a great heap of stones over his grave. And when there were but 300 men left of the 11 battalions of the Firbolgs, and Sreng at the head of them, Nuada offered them peace and their choice among the 5 provinces of Ireland, and Sreng said they would take Connacht, and he and his people lived there and their children after them. It is of them Ferdiad came afterwards that made such a good fight against Cuchulainn, and Arc, son of Carbra, that gave him his death. And that battle, that was the first fought in Ireland by the men of Dia, was called by some the first battle of Tuatha. And the Tuatha Danaan took possession of Tavar, that was sometimes called Drumcane, the beautiful ridge, and Lia Drum, the grey ridge, and Drum Nadeskin, the ridge of the outlook. All those names were given to Tavar, and from that time it was above all other places, for its king was the High King all over Ireland. The king's rat lay to the north, and the hill of the Hostages to the northeast of the high seat, and the green of Tavar to the west of the hill of the Hostages, and to the northeast in the hill of the Seed was a well called Nemnock, and out of it there flowed a stream called Nith, and on that stream the first mill was built in Ireland. And to the north of the hill of the Hostages was the stone, the Leafail, and it is used to roar under the feet of every king that would take possession of Ireland. And the wall of the 3 whispers was near the house of the women that had 7 doors to the east, and 7 doors to the west, and it is in that house the feasts of Tavar used to be held, and there was the great house of 1,000 soldiers, and near it, to the south, the little hill of the woman soldiers. That's the end of chapter 1. I hope you're enjoying the story so far. Let's kick straight in to chapter 2. The Reign of Brez. But if Nuda won the battle, he lost his own arm in it. That was struck off by Sreng, and by that loss there came troubles and vexation on his people. For it was a law with the Tuatha Danaan that no man that was not perfect in shape should be king, and after Nuda had lost the battle, he was put out of the kingship on that account. and the king they chose in his place was Brez. That was the most beautiful of all their young men, so that if a person wanted to praise any beautiful thing, whether it was a plane, or a dun, or ale, or a flame, or a woman, or a man, or a horse, it is what he would say, it is as beautiful as Brez. And he was the son of a woman of the Tuatha Danaan, but who his father was, no one knew but herself. But in spite of Brez being so beautiful, his reign brought no great luck to his people, for the Formore, whose dwelling place was beyond the sea, or as some say below the sea westward, began putting tribute on them, the way they would get them under their own rule. It was a long time before that Formore came first to Ireland. Dreadful they were to look at, and maimed, having but one foot or one hand, and they under the leadership of a giant and his mother. There never came to Ireland an army more horrible or more dreadful than that army of the Formore, and they were friendly with the Forbolgs and content to leave Ireland to them, but there was jealousy between them and the men of Dia, and it was a hard tax they put on them. A third part of their corn they asked, and a third part of their milk, and a third part of their children, so that there was not a smoke rising from a roof in Ireland but was under tribute to them, and Brez made no stand against them, but let them get their way. And as to Brez himself, he put a tax on every house in Ireland of the milk of harmless dun cows, or of the milk of cows of some other single colour, enough for 100 men. And one time, to deceive him, Nectan singed all the cows of Ireland in a fire of fern, and then he smeared them with the ashes of flaxseed, the way they were all dark brown. He did that by the advice of the druid Findgol, son of Findmus, and another time they made 300 cows of wood with dark brown pails in place of others, and the pails were filled with black bog stuff. Then Brez came to look at the cows, and to see them milked before him, and Cian, father of Luke, was there, and when they were milked it was the bog stuff that was squeezed out, and Brez took a drink of it thinking it to be milk, and he was not the better of it for a long time. But there was another thing against Brez. He was no way open-handed, and the chief men of the Tuatha Danaan grumbled against him, for their knives were never greased in his house, and however often they might visit him, there was no smell of ale on their breath, and there was no sort of pleasure or merriment in his house, and no call for their poets or singers or harpers or pipers, or horn blowers or jugglers or fools. And as to the trials of strength, they were used to see between their champions. The only use their strength was put to now was to be doing work for the king. Ogma himself, the shining poet, was under orders to bring firing to the palace every day for the whole army from the islands of Mad, and he so weak for want of food that the sea would sweep away 2/3 of his bundle every day. And as to the Dagda, he was put to build rats, for he was a good builder, and he made a trench round the rat brace, and he used often to be tired at the work. One time he nearly gave in altogether for want of food, and this is the way that happened. He used to meet in the house an idle blind man, Bell his name was, that had a sharp tongue, and that coveted the Dagda's share of food, for he thought his own to be small beside it. So he said to him, for the sake of your good name, let the 3 best bits of your share be given to me. And the Dagda gave in to that every night, but he was the worse for it, for what the blind man called a bit would be the size of a good pig, and with his 3 bits he would take a full third of the whole. But one day, as the Dagda was in the trench, he saw his son, Angus Og, coming to him. That is a good meeting, said Angus, but what is on you, for you have no good appearance today. There is a reason for that, said the Dagda. Every evening, Bell, the blind man, makes a demand for the 3 best bits of my share of food and takes them from me. I will give you an advice, said Angus. He put his hand in his bag then and took out 3 pieces of gold and gave them to him. Put these pieces of gold into the 3 bits you will give this evening to Crichton Bell, he said, and they will be the best bits in the dish, and the gold will turn within him the way he will die. So in the evening the Dagda did that, and no sooner had Crichton Bell swallowed down the gold than he died. Some of the people said then to the king, the Dagda has killed Crichton Bell, giving him some deadly herb. The king believed that, and there was anger on him against Dagda, and he gave orders he should be put to death. But the Dagda said, "You are not giving the right judgment of a prince," and he told all that had happened, and how Crichton Bell used to say, "Give me the 3 best bits before you, for my own share is not good tonight." And on this night, he said, the 3 pieces of gold were the best things before me, and I gave them to him, and he died. The king gave orders then to have the body cut open, and they found the gold inside it, and they knew it was the truth that the Dagda had told. And Angus came to him again the next day, and he said, "Your work will soon be done, and when you are given your wages, take nothing they may offer you, till the cattle of Ireland brought before you, and choose out a heifer then, black and black-maned, that I will tell you the signs of." So when the Dagda had brought his work to an end, and they asked him what reward he wanted, he did as Angus had bidden him. And that seemed folly to Bress. He thought the Dagda would have asked more than a heifer of him. There came a day at last when a poet came to look for hospitality at the king's house. Corpora, son of Etan, poet of the Tuatha Danaan. It is how he was treated. He was put in a little dark, narrow house where there was no fire, or furniture, or bed. And for a feast, 3 small cakes, and they dry, were brought to him on a little dish. When he rose up on the morrow, he was no way thankful, and as he was going across the green, it is what he said, without food ready on a dish, without milk enough for a calf to grow on, without shelter, without light in the darkness of night, without enough to pay a storyteller, may that be the prosperity of Bress. And from that day there was no good luck with Bress, but it is going down he was forever after, and that was the first satire ever made in Ireland. Now as to Nuda, after his arm being struck off, he was in his sickness for a while, and then Dian Kecht, the healer, made an arm of silver for him, with movement in every finger of it, and put it on him, and from that he was called Nuda Argat Love, of the silver hand, forever after. Now Meoch, son of Dian Kecht, was a better hand at healing than his father, and had done many things. He met a young man, having but one eye, at Tuatha one time, and the young man said, "If you are a good physician, you will put an eye in the place of the eye I lost." "I could put the eye of that cat in your lap, in its place," said Meoch. "I would like that well," said the young man. So Meoch put the cat's eye in his head, but he would as soon have been without it after, or when he wanted to sleep and take his rest. It is then the eye would start at the squeaking of the mice, or the flight of the birds, or the movement of the rushes, and when he was wanting to watch an army or a gathering, it is then it was sure to be in a deep sleep. And Meoch was not satisfied with what his father had done to the king, and he took Nuda's own hand that had been struck off and brought it to him, and set it in its place. And he said, "Joint to joint, sinew to sinew." 3 days and 3 nights he was with the king. The first day he put the hand against his side, and the second day against his breast, till it was covered with skin, and the third day he put bulrushes that were blackened in the fire on it. And at the end of that time the king was healed. But Dian Kecht was vexed when he saw his son doing a better cure than himself, and he threw his sword at his head, that it cut the flesh, but the lad healed the wound by the means of his skill. Then Dian Kecht threw the second time, that it reached the bone, but the lad was able to cure the wound. Then he struck him the third time, and the fourth, till he cut out the brain, for he knew no physician could cure him after that blow. And Meoch died, and he buried him. And herbs grew up from his grave, to the number of his joints and sinews, 365, and Earmid, his sister, came and spread out her cloak and laid out the herbs in it, according to their virtue. But Dian Kect saw her doing that, and he came and mixed up the herbs so that no one knows all their right powers to this day. Then when the Tuatha Danaan saw Nuda was well, as he was before, they gathered together to Tuatha, where Bress was, and they bade him give up the kingship, for he had held it long enough, so he had to give it up. Though he was not very willing, and Nuda was put back in the kingship again. There was great vexation on Bress then, and he searched his mind to know how could he be avenged on those who had put him out, and how he could gather an army against him. And he went to his mother, Eri, daughter of Delbat, and bade her tell him what his race was. "I know that well," she said. And she told him then that his father was a king of the Fomor, Elathan, son of Dalbak, and that he came to her one time over a level sea in some great vessel that seemed to be of silver, but she could not see its shape, and he himself having the appearance of a young man with yellow hair, and his clothes sewed with gold, and 5 rings of gold around his neck. And she that had refused the love of all the young men of her own people gave him her love, and she cried when he left her. And he gave her a ring from his hand, and bade her give it only to the man whose finger it would fit. And he went away then the same way as he had come, and she brought out the ring then to Bress, and he put it round his middle finger, and it fitted him well. And they went then together to the hill where she was the time she saw the silver vessel coming, and down to the strand, and she and Bress and his people set out for the country of the Fomor. When they came to that country, they found a great plain with many gatherings of people on it. And they went to the gathering that looked the best, and the people asked where did they come from, and they said they were come from Ireland. "Have you hounds with you?" they asked them then, for it was custom at that time, when strangers came to a gathering, to give them some friendly challenge. "We have hounds," said Bress. So the hounds were matched against one another, and the hounds of the Tuatha Danaan were better than the hounds of the Fomor. "Have you horses for a race?" they asked then. "We have," said Bress, and the horses of the Tuatha Danaan beat the horses of the Fomor. Then they asked, was anyone among them a good hand with the sword, and they said Bress was the best. But when he put his hand to his sword, Elathan, his father, that was among them, knew the ring, and he asked, who was this young man? Then his mother answered him, and told the whole story, and that Bress was his own son. There was sorrow in his father then, and he said, why was it drove you out of the country you were king over? And Bress said, nothing drove me out but my own injustice and my own hardness. I took away their treasures from the people and their jewels and their food itself, and there were never taxes put on them before I was their king. That is bad, said his father. It is of their prosperity you had a right to think more than of your own kingship, and their goodwill would be better than their curses, he said. And what is it you are come to look for here? I am come to look for fighting men, said Bress, that I may take Ireland by force. You have no right to get it by injustice when you could not keep it by justice, said his father. What advice have you for me then? Said Bress. And Elathan bade him go to the chief king of the Fomor, Alor of the Evil Eye, to see what advice and what help would he give him.